In a viral clip, a man who goes by the name Jaded with J posts TikTok videos, and in one that everyone's sharing around, he says, "I'm in a cult. Hunger for knowledge because I started detaching myself from that narrative." Around the 7-minute mark, he explains that as he started reading these books and breaking himself from this narrative, he realized the idea that the other side of the political world are just evil people out to destroy everything was wrong. And I'd been lied to. Now, I will say, this guy's a liberal guy. I mean, there's not too many videos from him, but he does have a video defending pronouns, criticizing Christianity. It's not hardcore leftist stuff. It's default liberal stuff. And I think that's the important takeaway. In this video produced, that's about 10 minutes long, he explains without naming the ideology or the politics. He discusses how he started reading a book from someone who was on the other side and that he thought this person was evil and it was very difficult to read, but he forced himself to do it. And he said, I found myself, just struggling to read this book. I open it up, I read a paragraph, I close it, I can't read this. And he realized he is in a cult. And I think it's obvious to everybody which side of the political spectrum he is on. Well, to verify this, because he doesn't get into the specifics in the video, I went to his TikTok page and I saw that he's a default liberal. He was saying things like, I understand people don't like pronouns, but instead of inventing words, I just use they, them for my friends. Default liberal position. He talks about Christianity and what's happened to it, flying in private jets and megachurches. But he's not, again, a far leftist. He makes a really great point in this long video talking about being in a cult and the pain he felt. And I saw this, and earlier in the week, I had been talking about a story which I'd like to take the opportunity to bring up as well as it pertains to the idea of Trump derangement syndrome and how to combat it and what to do. Because I had this funny thought. The story goes that this past weekend, I was at MGM National Harbor hanging out in the poker room. A lot of fun. For those that play poker, man, I can't do 1-3 anymore. 2-5, seriously. 5-10's crazy. People are nuts at 5-10. But anyway, more to the point. Some guys who knew who I was asked me if I would play a 5-10 game with them. This means there is a $5 and $10 required bet every rotation. So about every 8 hands you're dealt, you're spending $15. It's actually one of the cheapest games in the casino, despite the fact that 5-10 is a large poker game. And anyway, so I'm sitting at this table with these guys, a libertarian guy there. 2 guys who know who I am. One guy's not necessarily a fan, but he's seen the show. One guy has no idea who I am. Well, the guys who do are asking me questions, and I'm answering them. And, oh boy, does this trigger Mr. Trump derangement syndrome. He gets really angry. At first, he's just sitting there trying to figure out what hands I'm playing, and I ended up winning a ton of money. Crazy. And played really well. Kind of. That's another story. But anyway, I ended up winning, we're having conversations. I'm asked about Kanye West, what's going on in the show, political candidates I've had on the show. And then someone says, have you decided who you're voting for yet? I said, oh, Trump, of course. And this guy, he's sitting straight across to the left, loses it. All of a sudden, he just won't shut up. He's muttering to himself. He's complaining. He's whinging, saying things that aren't true, saying Trump has never told the truth in his life. How could you vote for someone? Wow, you must be so stupid. You can't argue with stupid. And the dude's not even hearing any word I have to say. The reason I bring this story up is, one, I love to tell it because probably one of the most joyous moments of my life was when he said, I bet you listen to Alex Jones. I bet you like listening to him. You're a conspiracy theorist. I was like, I actually know Alex Jones. And then I'm like, actually, I consider Alex Jones to be a friend of mine. And then the guy to my right's like, he's really going to get mad about that. And I'm just like, dude, what do you want me to say? Okay, I'm chilling. I'm laughing. I'm having a good time. We're playing a game here on the weekend. And this dude's brain is about to burst from his skull. And I'm like, now that I think about it, I love playing the cards straightforward when dealing with individuals like this. This guy, of course, I'm in a cult. He wakes up. He realizes it. And this is what we're experiencing. The reason we knew right off the bat this guy was a liberal, despite not saying Democrat or Republican or naming any individuals or naming a specific ideology, was because the right ain't in a cult. Oh, don't get me wrong. There are some diehard Trump culty people. They exist. But for the most part, I'm sitting here with a guy who's wearing an RFK Jr. shirt, a guy who says he's in the Mises caucus of the Libertarian Party, another guy who says he's seen the show before, he doesn't like Trump, he's a Kanye fan, We're all different politics here. The guy sitting in front of me, he was Jewish, and he said, I love Ye, but it's a shame that he doesn't like my people. And I was like, well, don't worry. Jonah Hill convinced him to like you again. He's like, oh, yeah, I believe that. We laughed. And he was asking me genuine questions about, don't you think Donald Trump is bad for this, that, or otherwise? And I was calmly answering. We had a conversation. This guy was like regular dude, and he seemed smart. The guy with Trump derangement syndrome, you could not even say a single word to him. His brain did not function properly. I don't know what he was doing at a 5-10 game if he can't function that way and his emotional triggers just go through the roof. I don't know what causes people to experience this. But as you know, and I know, it is not a function of the quote unquote right. It is a function of the left. So this is what I find fascinating about this. I want to play a little bit of this clip so you can hear what this guy has to say. And I want to address some of it to break down this narrative in the world we live in. It is a yin-yang moment. I believe that the left is dominated by powerful individuals in media and politics, and I genuinely will say they are evil. Does not mean that every single person on the left is evil. There are people I like, depending on what your definition of the left is. We could say far leftists, we could say economic leftists, we can say establishment, but I want to make sure we make these distinctions clear. Kyle Kulinski, for instance, he is, in essence, in a certain sense, a leftist, but we just have different opinions. I think Kyle Kulinski tries his best to be an honest guy and really understand the world, and I have tremendous respect for him. Crystal Ball, for instance, and, from Breaking Points. I also view as a progressive who gets a lot of things wrong, but I also know that you can have a real conversation with her because she is a sane, rational human being. I look at people like the Young Turks. I think they're intentionally lying and manipulating people for power, but it's a mixed bag. Yes, they care about things, but, they'll lie. I look at people like Vosh and Hassan. Hassan is, I think, more of a doofy guy who doesn't really know what he's talking about and just toes the line for leftist and establishment ideas. Vosh, I think, is very intelligent and is a sophist who will manipulate and massage facts to try and make a point and make it seem like he's smart and correct. In essence, they're creating a false worldview to manipulate people to live the way they want. The right has these elements, no question. But it's fewer and far between. You certainly have people on the right who are going to lie, cheat, and steal because that's a human trait, not a political trait. But then you'll run into, as I mentioned, conversations where, for instance, Timcast IRL, we are viewed in the mainstream media as hard right or far right or whatever. They like to say that, despite the fact Vice has also called me far left, whatever, for my anti-corporate views. Despite the fact that we'll have Marianne Williamson on, we'll have anybody who wants to come on, but get this, something which plays to this guy's video, which I probably should play a clip of. The left won't come on a show like this. Even RFK Jr. won't come on. And the guy sitting across from me, he's a cool dude. He's wearing an RFK Jr. shirt. Why won't he come on? And I'm like, come on. All of these people know you will have a hard go of it if it comes down to questions of fact. That's it. You can have any political opinion you want. Destiny, love him. Good dude. Disagree with him a lot. Understand a little bit of his worldview. We agree on facts. We agree on the different moral implications of facts. And he gets things wrong, and so do I. But I know that when Destiny, the omni-liberal, comes and sits down, he's going to say, this happened on January 6th, therefore. And I'm going to say, we agree that happened, but not that it qualifies. You get my point. We're not going to debate when you have multiple news sources saying a thing is true. But Destiny has no problem reading the news saying, yes, I saw that too. Accepting an issue. However, Destiny is going to take that liberal perspective. And so I can respect that we're having a conversation and that he actually heard what I said and tried to counter it. As opposed to this guy at the poker game, he got so boiled that when I was leaving, because I was like, I can only play for an hour, we got to go to dinner, he actually spins his chair around and turns his back on me as I'm saying, later, good playing with you guys. And I was even going to say to him, I tried. I was going to say, hey, man, I appreciate you speaking up. We don't agree, but it's cool. It was nice playing with you. He turns his back to me. I was like, hey, good playing with you guys. I was like, hey, man, nice playing with you. And I'm all right. That's a broken brain. I'm sorry. You can come to me and you can be any political ideology in the world, even the most egregious. I have sat down with white nationalists. I have sat down and spoken with white supremacists and argued with them. I have stood in protest and said, you guys are wrong for these reasons. And the craziest thing is they desperately try to argue their point. And I'm like, you sound stupid. But the left, man, something happens. Let me play a little bit of this clip for you guys.
Well, I woke up. Like, officially woke up. I've been thinking that I was, awake and seeing the world for what it really was for a long time. And I've been I'll occasionally be the person online that'll be like, you know what? Like, wake up. Like, see what's actually happening in this world. And I had no idea. I legitimately had no idea. And it all started with me kind of coming to the realization that 50% of this country has a completely different way of viewing the world than me. And I've always kind of had this idea that it was because they were being lied to, or they were being manipulated, or they were evil, or they were stupid. That's the reason why they're able to vote for the person that they're voting for in spite of all of the really scary things that are happening in the world. And I realized that it cannot be true. It cannot be true that every single one of these people falls into one of those categories. And maybe they're voting for the person that they're voting for with all of those dangers or the scary things, either because A, they don't see them, or because the things that they see on my side are scarier to them than the things that are happening on theirs. And that really made me start to question, because I'm personally not really I haven't been afraid of much from my political party. And I was like, what are they seeing? And so I really made it a mission of mine to at least, I wasn't going to agree with what they were seeing, but I wanted to understand it.
So I want to pause there and break this down. The reason why he's instantly viewed as a liberal, a default liberal. When I'm sitting at this poker table, the guy says to me, name one thing Donald Trump has done you like. I went, Abraham Accords. Like, without question, snap, the easiest thing. No, I said no new wars. First president in my lifetime who did not start a war and actually began to pull our troops back. And the guy goes, oh, no response. He immediately starts muttering to the guy next to him, who also didn't like Trump. He's saying, you can't argue with stupid. I guess these people are too stupid to realize. And I was like, dude, I'm sitting right here. Guy, I answered your question. Ask me more about it. I will tell you everything. And so the world we live in, I think most of us understand. You, dear viewer, likely saw a video that debunked a narrative. You read news articles. You started to actually try and break down what are people talking about. Brandon Strzok talks a great deal about this with Walk Away. That's why I think he's doing great work and he should do more. I'm glad to see they're coming back. And he mentions that he felt physical pain when he realized his worldview was fake, that the media had lied about everything Trump was doing. And so here I sit with a guy. He won't listen to a single word I have to say. He doesn't actually care. He just wants to hate. It's the fascinating thing. The reason why I wanted to show this clip from this video. He said the other side was being lied to or being manipulated. They were evil. I'm going to say it again. The left, I believe, is generally evil. Generally. They're compromised of default liberals, ignorant individuals who don't know what's going on and haven't looked. I feel bad for them, but we want to convert these people by showing them the truth. Guys like this or people like Marianne Williamson, I think, can be explained. You don't have to agree with me on taxes or healthcare or nuclear power. Just know what's really happening so we can solve these problems. You have people like that. And so we had Marianne Williamson on, and she's lovely. She's a very nice woman I have tremendous respect for, her, and she's wrong about a lot of things. But we exposed her to news and information she had never read before. Hopefully that informs her decision-making process. You then have people like this guy at the poker table I've described. This guy was out of his mind, incapable of listening to words, and just wants to hate. He wants something to be mad about. He wants to hate something and blame someone for all of his problems. And well, it's funny because isn't this what the right says of the left? They're evil, they're lied to, they're being manipulated. Listen, when the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus are sitting down and having conversations with post-liberals and conservatives, and we're disagreeing, or even people like Destiny, who's a liberal but willing to to have these arguments, there's not a cult. We're not being lied to or manipulated. To a certain degree, of course, we all are. But you genuinely have this guy who has been lied to and manipulated to the point where he can't see straight, let alone have a conversation. There was no arguing with him. His brain did not function. I'm not saying it to be mean to a guy with Trump derangement syndrome. I'm saying when the dude asked me to name one thing I liked, and I did, He did, before I even finished the word Abraham Accords, he's muttering to himself, looking down, going, that's so stupid people. They're so stupid. I can't believe how stupid people are. Have you stopped to actually listen to words, my friend? No. His brain had shut down. For what reason, I don't know. But it is typically these kinds of people you have interacted with. You know this. Trump derangement syndrome. Now you want to argue about like Biden derangement syndrome or whatever. And it's like, not really. Not really. People say, name one good thing Joe Biden has done. I'm like, well, he had this push to reduce ATM fees and overdraft fees. That was kind of a big deal. People really liked that one. You know, I got to give him something. Nothing's absolute. Of course, there's something we're going to like. But for the most part, he's not really done much, and he's done too much bad. And so here I sit with a guy when I'm like, yeah, Trump's lewd, lascivious. And he's like, the largest deficit. And I was like, yeah, it was a big deficit. It was. And oh, yeah, and drone strikes in foreign countries. Guess. And I was like, he said, choose any other president before him who was, and he said, choose someone who was, he says, if you want to vote for someone, why don't you vote for someone who respects the Constitution? And I said, who, Joe Biden? And he goes, any of them except Trump. And I was like, Barack Obama? I'm like, he drone bombed children. He killed an American citizen. A constitutional defense. Spare me. And he says, Trump locked kids in cages, separated from their families. And I said, these facilities were built by Obama. And he was like, no, they weren't. You're lying. And I was like, dude, I lived in Homestead. I lived in Miami where they had one of these facilities. Doesn't matter. And therein lies the point. He starts rattling off all the nonsense. He justifies anything that could be good as bad. And that, it's a cult. You come to me and you say, Mises Caucus, Libertarian Party, Dave Smith, here's why he's the guy. We have Dave Smith on the show and we talk to him, and Dave's great. And I'm like, man, I'd really love to see Dave Smith be president with a Michael Malice press secretary. But I think the reality is Donald Trump's the best we're going to get. He's got the momentum, no new wars. I'll say this a million times. And then I said to these guys, the first president in my life who didn't start a war and actually tried to end them, there's nothing you're going to say to me. And it's not an issue of facts. We agree on the facts. It's an issue of your moral weight means nothing to my moral values. Okay? If you argue Trump is lewd and lascivious, I agree on that issue. And this is why I said I respect Destiny. Our morals differ, but we understand what's true. We're not always right. I know many of you are like, but Destiny was wrong about this. I agree. But I know that if I pull up an article with Destiny, we're both going to be like, okay, we acknowledge that as an article we trust and a source with a video. Okay, that happened. The moral implications are different. And that's where we disagree. And I'm totally okay with that. My issue with Trump is no new wars and attempts at peace. Securing the U.S. border, not perfect. Bringing jobs back, not perfect. Drone strikes, a lot of things that were not perfect. I would prefer probably a libertarian candidate, and the Mises Caucus seems pretty great. Realistically, it's not going to happen. I would prefer Vivek Ramaswamy. But I told him, look, you don't have it. It's more than just ideas to become the president. So Donald Trump seems to make the most sense. He has momentum, he has the base, and he's done enough good. I can't stand the libertarians who are like, but the COVID lockdown stuff. I'm like, dude, then vote libertarian. But if you think we're going to win with a libertarian, then good luck to you. I'm looking at realistically, and honestly, I think Trump has been a net positive president. I think that when you look at the economic factors, despite all the bad things, mass spending, there were bad things, the economy was doing well. I think you take a look at foreign wars, pulling our troops out, he was doing well. I think you take a look at the $3 billion reinvestment into the auto manufacture and the auto industry in Michigan, and I think, wow, let's make America great again. I see these net positives, things that he's done that were pretty good. Far from perfect. Let's call it 51%, where you cross 50%, you're in the net positive threshold. I look at Joe Biden as a massive net negative. Barack Obama was a massive net negative. George W. Bush was the biggest net negative of my life with the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, which just led to all this conflict and chaos and refugee crises and all that. And Bill Clinton, I gotta be honest, not really old enough to understand the implications or live in that world or follow the news. But, he had his issues too. Again, in my lifetime, for the presidents, as I've been an adult, Donald Trump's done the best. And I want to see more. I want to see no foreign wars. I want to see this stuff move back. And so I say, okay, I'll take it, baby. Joe Biden ain't it, and ain't anybody else. So what is the rationale for opposing him? I think this guy starts to see it. he starts to listen to moral conservatives and think, I get that. I'll give you one. It's the other side. They're a cult. You're transphobes. You're bigots. Desistance rates, according to the scientific research, can range from like 65 to 95%. The numbers are a little off on that one, but it's around there. It could be like 65 to 92, or it might be even higher than that. And suicide rates can range from like 30 to 40% or more for those that are trans. In which case, more likely, a child will stop being trans, stop experiencing dysphoria by the time they reach puberty. But putting them on blockers could result in a dramatic increase in suicidality. So that's just logic. I don't hate anybody. I'm just like, it's probably better that we do this. The left, of course, won't listen to a single word of it. So what do? I bring up this story and I saw this video and I wanted to make the point. Part of me actually wanted to play the manipulative game because there's a bunch of things I could have said. When he said, who are you voting for? He didn't ask me, someone else did. And I said, Trump, and the guy lost his mind. I know how this stuff works. I've talked about it quite a bit. Rapport extreme turn. I brought this up several times in manipulation tactics and techniques. Rapport extreme turn. Many of you if you followed every single one of my videos, you've heard me talk about it before, but it's not something I talk about quite frequently. But I'll give you an example of how we would use this manipulation technique to alter an opinion and how you would do it in this context. The concept is this. First, to actually be able to convince someone of anything, you have to have a rapport with them. They have to feel that you are one of them and they are safe. If someone approaches you as an enemy, you will go defensive emotionally and physically. What this results in is them saying, no matter what, you're my enemy and you're wrong. So what do? Rapport. In this circumstance, when a guy clearly hated Trump, rapport would mean, I completely agree. What a disgusting, tyrannical psychopath. I'm voting for Joe Biden because he's, of course, the incumbent. There's no other candidate. He's the best we got. What he did under the Obama administration was not necessarily the most impactful historical things, but he did a good job. He did his job, unlike Donald Trump. Now we've established rapport. This guy saying he's like me. He also doesn't like Trump. Emotional barriers lowered. The next thing you do is shock their system with what's called the extreme. The extreme would be like the reason I'm really interested in another Biden presidency is I just think we've got to just destroy and then insert country. I'm going to avoid actually saying the name of a country, because it'll just cause, people to lose their minds. But my point is, you put him in a position where he's supposed to be on your side and your allies, but you present him a circumstance he could not possibly agree with. I got to be honest. I think Biden needs to redouble his efforts. I think we need more bombs dropping in these areas. Just put an end to it. Turn it to glass already. I appreciate the $100 billion he sent already, but it's time to vaporize these people. I think the next thing they should do is we shouldn't just be sending aid to Ukraine. We need full-scale invasion of Russia. I'm actually glad that's on the table. And it's only going to be on the table with Joe Biden. Donald Trump trying to appease dictators. No, I think, look, I'm 37. I'm not going to get drafted. We start drafting up our 18-year-olds, send them to the front line, put an end to Putin once and for all, take it over, and lock the Russians in camps. You see, that's a psychotic thing to say, right? Of course. The extreme puts him in a pressure situation where he's supposed to agree with you. Biden is the better choice than Trump. But you've now, as his friend, created a circumstance where he must disagree with you. Of course, then, he won't be triggered by Trump derangement syndrome because he's pro-Biden. He'll push back. And he'll say, no. You can't do any of that. Are you nuts? You can't send American boots on the ground. I was like, what do you mean? We already got them there now. We got special forces. What are you, some Trump supporter? You want to defend Russia? And now you've put him in the Trump supporter camp. Defending Russia? No, that's not me. I can't do that. You see what you've done? You've become the Biden supporter, accusing him of defending Trump for not wanting to be so extreme. This is manipulation. This is why I don't like doing it. I abandoned this stuff a long time ago because working in the nonprofit sector, it's so dirty and filthy. It's what they do for ideological capture. In this context, typically you can expect someone to be presented with this extreme scenario to reject that and say, I'm not getting behind something like that. I don't like Trump, but I'm not voting for that. To which you can then respond, okay, look, I get it, right? As long as we can agree Trump is not is not an option, I'll take it. Maybe Biden isn't the best choice. Maybe he's not that good and his policies might have some errors, particularly with Ukraine, but we can at least agree on no Trump. The turn is when you've now planted the seed in their mind. They opposed you. So by creating this extreme, they've taken the position of opposing Biden policy. You then agree with them. You know what? Fine. You're right. I'll give it to you. Biden's not that great. Okay? In fact, he's probably bad. But I just don't want Trump. You've made it their idea. It's the inception, basically. You've made it their idea. There's a flaw with my candidate. They pushed back. These are basic manipulation techniques. It's like the first step in changing people's opinions. Now, the issue with these is the context they work in. Politicians aren't going to say it. Newscasters aren't going to do it. It only really works in one-off circumstances where you meet someone and then you leave and you never meet him again. You cannot maintain the facade that you actually like Joe Biden. So I thought about that scenario and I'm like, I'm never going to see this guy again. I was like, what if I just pushed his buttons? I don't like doing that. I just outright said, look, I like Trump. Here's why. And his brain exploded. But it makes me wonder if there really is a way to deprogram people who are in a cult who are unwilling to listen. What do? There's a viral video right now of a teacher who deprograms a kid who thinks J.K. Rowling's a bigot. And he asks a bunch of questions. And finally, at the end of the video, the kid says, I actually feel really stupid for having said that. And the teacher's like, no, that's fine. I mean, we hear things and then we make assumptions because we trust. The reality is, we have to be morally just. We have to stand by what we believe in, which is being honest. The reason why using a manipulation tactic like that in this guy would be the wrong thing to do is that if you truly believe you are justified in using these tactics, you're only creating a world where those tactics will be implemented by those in power. And thus, the ends do not justify the means because you'll never meet the ends. We must take the actions that are morally just today. And that is being honest and trying our hardest despite the fact some people are obstinate and their brains don't work. But at least this guy figured it out. I'm going to leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.